live my life.
Wait. Okay.
All right.
Question before we start the notes. Zach, are you a disco girl?
No,
Yeah, he's got the thing.
I got the
water bottle.
scrunchies. I got the scrunchies and I got
He's got the membership card.
the membership. The what?
The membership card. You got the water bottle and scrunchies.
Is that the membership card?
Yeah.
I guess.
Where's your Fukasicho necklace?
All right.
I was gonna get one, but they're like expensive.
We are picking up from where we left off yesterday.
That's what we gonna get you.
I can't wait.
Hang on, I'm trying to find my period.
All the time.
All right, so we were going over Rousseau's controversial arguments yesterday. We talked about how he felt like women's roles were to attract the male to marry and then create families and take care of them. That's pretty much it. He did not like women in social gatherings. He thought any influence they had on politics was unnatural. So he felt like women should be seen and not heard and be relegated to the home. That's pretty much it. And like we said, kind of like then and now, there are some women who support those ideas. Much more then, obviously, than now. But like I said, whenever we get to T-shirt decision time in the spring, if you don't pick an idea, like they almost didn't last year, it's going to be Jean-Jacques Rousseau's fan club. And I'm going to put, like, as his quote, "Make me a sandwich" or something like that. So get on it, right?
That would be low kind of funny, though.
All right.
Say we're using our male brain.
Right. All right. Mary Wollstonecraft's vindication of rights of women. So Mary Wollstonecraft vigorously rejected the notion of women's limitations. So Wollstonecraft is, I think she's officially your last Enlightenment thinker to know about. She's also in your chart. But Wollstonecraft, mother of Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, vigorously rejected the notion of women's limitations. This British activist published a book in the 1790s called A Vindication of Rights of Women. It was actually in response to another book we're going to learn about later on in another unit. But it's a book where she argues that women should receive an equal education of men. Because, why are women not as capable as men? Well, because they're not given the same opportunities as men, which is what she argues. So she argues that women should receive an equal education to men, and that they should participate in politics and the economy outside the home. So she believes they should participate in politics and the economy outside the home. So we should have another little debate about who's right, Rousseau or Wollstonecraft.
Alex is going to be
Again.
That's strike three, bud.
What? What? All right, so that's Wollstonecraft. Reflection on the period. So, doctors, scientists, and philosophers also agreed women were different based on their sexual organs rather than traditions or scripture. So doctors, scientists, and philosophers also agreed women were different based on their sexual organs rather than just tradition or scripture.
I thought you meant like their organs were different.
No, basically because their organs are different, it makes them different, but also it makes them obviously it makes them different, but less capable, right? Like a hierarchy, right? Men have physical differences, so they're stronger, thus they're superior, versus women who are dainty flowers, right?
For a time about knowledge, they're super into strength and
Yeah.
I for real think that Rousseau had linguini legs. She probably could just break them.
just noodle.
Yeah. Well, they probably all did back then. So, Rousseau's idea of natural passivity, supporting subordination, was akin to Kant saying non-Europeans were inferior and slavery was justified. So Rousseau's idea of natural passivity, supporting subordination of women under men, was akin to Kant, Immanuel Kant, saying non-Europeans were inferior and slavery was justifiable. So Rousseau's idea of natural passivity, supporting subordination, was akin to Kant, saying non-Europeans were inferior and slavery was justified. So there you go. Questions about any of these people and these concepts? Right.
I just want to know what woman hurt him. Who blamed him for him chapter
He
right
got made fun of.
I'm sure there's biographies. You can probably go read.
Was he ever married?
I don't know.
Probably not. If he's going around saying women don't deserve rights.
Yeah, but again, that's what a lot of people thought. So it's not like it wouldn't happen. Like you said, like there are people out there that who are going to support those ideas, right?
It sounds like you're trying to make him into a good guy.
I didn't say I'm making them good. I'm saying there are people who support those
You're
ideas.
trying to look at the best side of him.
All right, moving on. Urban culture and life in public square. So a series of new institutions and practices help spread the Enlightenment ideals. So in addition to warfare mostly stopping to where you have time to think and process new ideas, and also obviously printing press is a factor here. The Republic of Letters is a factor here. There are other elements too that help spread Enlightenment ideals besides all the things we've already talked about. So between 1700 and 1789, book consumption dramatically grew, as did different types of books. So reading and book consumption grew dramatically throughout the 1700s. And by 1750, religious and devotional books had dropped off as the main types of books purchased. So that's another big shift that's happening here too. That while book consumption is going up, you're actually seeing a decline in religious tracts and pamphlets and books, and an increase of enlightenment and more logic and reason and scientific-based writing, politic writing too. So history and the law were on the rise. Arts and sciences surged as well. Again, Paris kind of sets the precedent for this. They kind of the hot spot for a lot of thinking and all the new intellectual writings. So reading is changing. The more educated public begins to approach reading in new ways. So the more educated public, general people, begin to approach reading in new ways.
You mean everyday people like the farmers?
Well,
Like the middle class.
Probably not they're not probably the farmers and stuff. They're probably still doing their thing. But I'm talking about people living in cities more or less, just average regular people. Because here's the old style. The old style was they would read sacred texts of the Bible aloud to the family. They would have the dad read the Bible, and that's what you read, right? Or maybe the dad read some devotional or some sermon, but that was basically the reading exposure you got. You learn how to read the Bible, and you read stuff around the Bible, and that's pretty much it. And you read it as a family. Now, books cover much broader topics, and reading becomes more of an individual and silent activity. So instead of always gathering around to read with each other, now you go off by yourself and read on your own, and you learn about multiple different things, because reading subject matter has now broadened much bigger. Also, it was encouraged to question writing now. Before the Bible, you never questioned what they said. You basically accepted it as truth, and then you read it and listened to it, and you go about your day. But now people are writing ideas, and they're encouraging you to think about what they're writing about, and whether you agree or not with what they're saying. So reading itself is also changing too. Now you also get different ways to access reading material and ideas as well. So if you couldn't afford a book, people began to create what? Lending libraries, right? Where they're like, hey, what if we just let these books out for free? And you bring them back after you're done with them, right? For free. So lending libraries become a thing now during the Enlightenment, where people are like, the average person should have access to these ideas. And they want them on shelves that you can go check out and read on your own if you want to.
Oh. Okay, when I went to Oklahoma, they had all these phone booths around, and if you went in, it was a lending library.
Yeah. And we have some of that kind of stuff here, not phone booths, but little street library stuff here in Zachary too. Coffee houses. Coffee houses became meccas of philosophical discussion.
Well, some things never change.
Yeah.
I think of the white girls, they go to the coffee house waiting for some guy to sit down and talk to them.
Yeah.
The Victorian girls are
Yeah. Same thing. That's changed, right?
All sitting there, milk the grande.
Yeah. But again, coffee became a big time crop that was developed in, again, remember it's all exploration, right? Exploration has still been happening for a while now. So coffee became a big import, So coffee houses beginning to develop, but it was a place to go over a tavern. Like you would go there over a tavern.
Oh, so it's like a PG tavern.
Right, because basically at a coffee house, you drink coffee, you're more alert, you like your brain's higher functioning, so you can have these discussions. At a tavern, you're getting like sloppy drunk, and you fight people and stuff, right? So it's not really the place to have philosophical discussions as much as coffee houses were. Right. So they provided a new space, a new public space for people to share their ideas, especially moderate means people. So it was like, okay, I can't go to a salon, but I can go talk about these ideas at a coffee house and get some cheap coffee and talk about this with other people. And like I said, the coffee itself is more invigorating to your mind than like drinking a bunch of alcohol.
I just think it's so funny. They're just caffeinated. They're like, "What's the meaning of life, guys?"
Yeah. Because like at bars, just like, like, oh, hey guy, I love you, man. Anyway, so other organizations that influenced the public square included book clubs, debate societies, and Masonic lodges. So like other organizations that also promoted public interaction that were new, like book clubs, debating societies. Like we actually had societies where you come together and debate ideas.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, what is a Masonic lodge? Because I got a scholarship from them. I have no idea what it is.
So what it was then versus what it is now, two different things. Like what it was then, it was like more based on like a secret society type situation where like you had to like meet certain requirements and you had to like be asked in. It's kind of cultish where you had to be asked in. Now it's just more like a social club for men essentially.
Men.
It's not the same.
Miranda, why are you
Was
I need money. It's fine.
well, they probably because a lot of organizations offer these things as a way to like it's community service, right? It's like tax deductible type stuff, right? It's a way to give back. So like they probably offer scholarships. You probably met their criteria, and here we are, right? So you're taking dirty cult money, but whatever.
Hey, Alex did it too.
There you go. So groups of Freemasons, which were a secret society that accepted craftsmen and shopkeepers, also allowed in like middle class people and some nobles. And it was another situation where you have these people kind of moderate means together that would meet weekly or monthly or whatever, and they would come together and share their ideas and so forth. So Masonic Lodge is another place too. Salons, obviously salons, but that's more like upper class. You had to be invited to those. Also newspapers. Now you're going to see like the idea of like, hey, we're publishing news about what's going on, but let's also publish some of these ideas too. That what if you're dirt poor? What if you can't afford to go into town to go to the library? You can't afford to go to a coffee house because you have next to no money. So there are people who are also like, let's publish these ideas in pamphlets or newspapers, which are very cheap. So newspapers and pamphlets make it very cheap for like even commoners. So like over time, some of the main ideas of the Enlightenment, some of the big ideas get trickled down all the way down to newspapers and pamphlets to where commoners have even access to it as well, where they can buy it for very cheap. Or even if one guy buys it, then you just basically pass it around and share it too, right? So philosophies didn't always directly have access to the lower classes, to peasants and those people and urban workers. Mostly because these philosophers didn't believe that those lower commoners had any time or talent for understanding it. So like the philosophers took no time in trying to help out the common man, like the very common person, peasant person types, from understanding their ideas. They also thought they were too superstitious and driven by violent passions. But because of things like newspapers and pamphlets, they still got access to it.
So isn't like the commoner, like the common thing, it's like, oh, you wouldn't understand because you're just a commoner, but isn't that the same thing as like you're not giving them the opportunity?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Like no one's doing public education though yet either. So like,
Nice.
because like, oh, y'all are just dumb, you commoners. Well, yeah, because they never went to school. So like,
Man, love the Enlightenment.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, very.
It's just be better.
Yeah, you should innately know all of this information
Exactly.
that I know.
Any questions on this? Everybody's good?
She is not a conversation.
I
I
know.
was starting that bomb.
All right.
Oh, I'm telling her the thing.
Switching over to Enlightenment Absolutists. Switching over to Enlightenment Absolutists. All right, so most Enlightenment thinkers outside of England and the Netherlands believe political change could only come from above, not below. So most Enlightenment thinkers, outside of England and Netherlands, believe that political change could only happen from above, not below. Whereas obviously, like England kind of did that already with what? Glorious Revolution, right? So they kind of already had it kind of come from below, which is not that far below. But Netherlands was what at this point? Republic, right? So they much more believed in like the abilities of regular people than everybody else. But basically, outside everywhere else, most thinkers or people supported some form of monarchy, and basically just wanted the monarchy to change. Like they wanted to tweak the monarchy, right? Not to get rid of it. So absolutism was a fact of life for many of these places, and monarchs had no intention of giving up their power. Thus, most philosophers believed that benevolent absolutism was very possible and the best solution. Like basically, the Enlightenment thinkers thought we need to convince these guys to be Enlightenment rulers as well. That way, they'll basically rule in a very just way. Burn the prince. Oh, burn the prince. I was like, what prince? Why we burn? Okay. All right. So we're going to define what is Enlightenment absolutism. Some government officials were interested in philosophical ideas, and these were the best educated members of society usually, and very involved with monarchs. So, like, there was a lot of people who served monarchies who were influenced by the Enlightenment, and so some of these people who served the monarchs began to introduce these ideas to the monarchs. This is how Catherine the Great developed a relationship with Voltaire. So people who served in higher society were obviously impacted by Enlightenment thinking, and they kind of spoke in the ears of these monarchs to change their ways of thinking. So with their advice, some absolutist rulers tried to reform their governments in accordance with Enlightenment ideals. So in Catholic and Protestant lands, usually what you have is those guys have Enlightenment infused together with religion. So a lot of those countries that are like outside of like Britain or Netherlands, a lot of these countries are trying to fuse like the religious ideas along with the Enlightenment together, whether it be Catholic or Protestant. The three countries that had the biggest Enlightenment rulers were Prussia, Austria, and Russia. So Prussia, Austria, and Russia were the three countries that had the most famous actual attempts of Enlightenment absolutism. So we need to introduce Frederick the Great, or Frederick the II.
Yes.
Well, you a big Frederick the Great fans?
Yes.
Why?
He's great. The potatoes. Potatoes? He has nice talent. He has a nice
Oh, she's solid. Okay, that's why I'm like, what? This is weird. All right. So this is Frederick the Great up here. Two versions of him, the young version, the old version. Frederick the Great, if you recall, his dad was Frederick the First, who was like the guy who wore military uniform all the time.
Is this Frederick William the First or just Frederick the First?
No, his dad was Frederick the First.
What happened to Frederick William?
That was that guy's dad.
He died. Oh yeah, because it was Frederick.
Oh no, I'm back up. I'm confused. I'm switched. You're right. It is Frederick William. His dad was Frederick William the First. Sorry. I'm back. Switched up. So this guy is Frederick the Second. That's the Great. His dad was Frederick William the First. That was the guy who like made Prussia a military powerhouse. The guy who was all about military uniforms and marching and orders. He made a giant military. So this is his son, who was not in all that as a young boy. As a young boy, he embraced a lot of culture and literature over militarism. Yeah. It's also now known that he was also what?
Gay.
He's also gay. So he also embraced a lot of culture and literature rather than militarism like his dad. In fact, whenever his dad was trying to groom him to become the ruler, at one point he and his friend tried to run off together. So dad got him captured, brought him back, had the friend executed, and so then basically got his son into so even after this attempted escape, he comes back and it's kind of reformatted here. He's still homosexual, like being homosexual. But basically he is gonna now listen, when he's king then he wants, right? But basically he's basically conditioned to be more into becoming a ruler, and over time he becomes much more military minded over time.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
So, if you should name a mistress, what would you call a mister?
I guess.
A mister?
So he becomes
A mister.
the ruler of Prussia in 1740. In that same year, he decided to go and basically try to seize territory away from Austria. This is called the War of Austrian Succession. So here's why. The Emperor of Austria, Charles VI, dies in 1740. So at the same time that Prussia gets a king, Austria gets a new empress. So he only had a daughter, Maria Theresa. Maria Theresa, which I think I have on this slide. Maria Theresa was in their country they never had a female ruler. They were not used to having females. So essentially, as soon her dad made a decree saying that she's going to become the Empress of Austria, as soon as she's Empress of Austria, you have several people trying to buy her position. So Frederick the Great is not trying to take her job. He just is okay, now I have a new leader who's probably weak, Maria Theresa. I'm going to go take some of her territory that I want. So he's not trying to become the leader of Austria. He's just trying to basically take territory away from her.
Okay. So, Austria didn't have a leader.
No, they had Maria Theresa. She was the leader, but everybody wanted to accept her. Right. They never had a woman leader before.
So how did you do it?
Because she was there. She was next in line. She was the daughter. They just people are comfortable with having a female. That's what the problem was.
Get over it.
Well, we know what Rousseau said, right?
No, I'm a
Right.
woman. I don't know how to understand.
So anyway, so without a perceived weak leader, Frederick II invaded the rich province of Silesia. So Silesia is here. So here in Prussia, Prussia only has territory here, a few random chunks in here and here. So in 1740, what starts our Austrian succession, because the succession is who's going to be the leader of Austria, and Maria Theresa has her foot down, so I'm going to be the leader. But in that time of the vulnerability, Frederick II comes in and takes Silesia, the strip right there, with a resource-rich area. So basically, Frederick the Great is defining what's called the Pragmatic Sanction. The Pragmatic Sanction was what Charles VI had decreed and everybody agreed to before he died. Before he died, he was like, hey everybody, my daughter is going to be ruler of Austria. You're all going to agree to it.
Who cares?
So all these nobles agreed to it. They're like, yeah, you'll be the leader of Austria. Yeah, sure. So as soon as he dies, now everybody's challenging the Pragmatic Sanction. So she also had a fight off not only Frederick the Great, but other countries and other nobles trying to take her position. So now she's going to have to lead Austria the war against other various nobles and Prussia at the same time to secure power. That's the Austrian succession. After 8 years of fighting, she is successful in controlling and keeping her borders and fighting off all these would-be usurpers. I think she does not get back as well. Silesia. She is going to lose Silesia to the Russians.
This is why Frederick the Great becomes Frederick the Great.
So like wouldn't not count though? It's like your family, so why would you just like put it together?
Well, because remember, it's still technically, so it's all kinds of random nobles who have rights and claim stuff, right? So it's a lot of principalities. So anyway, she does defend off usurpers and secures her position as Empress of Austria, but Prussia does get Silesia, and they're going to have a population of 6 million. So by getting Silesia, they're going to have a population of 6 million. And so Prussia, as a result of this war, becomes one of the great powers of Europe. So I now have many people become a military powerhouse. Prussia under Frederick the Great becomes a great European power